need to talk about the conference of the parties because the more these gatherings are organized, the higher global CO2 emissions keep rising. In June 1992, world leaders met in Rio de Janeiro for the United Nations Conference on the Environment and Development. It was a well-attended conference which adopted sweeping decisions that continue to affect our lives today. World leaders made decisions, for example, on environmental impact assessment studies, on the role that women play in development and protection of the environment, on the fact that we have to reduce harmful ways of production and consumption, and also on the fact that all countries must come together and act in good faith to protect the environment for present and future generations. Importantly too, 154 countries ratified the treaty setting up the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And this revolutionary act, if I can put it that way, created the Conference of the Parties, better known as COP. Shortly after the Rio conference, we have the first COP in Berlin. A few years later, Kyoto adopts a very important decision. Hard targets are set for a number of countries to cut emissions. Unfortunately, the United States and China, and obviously other countries that didn't want to cut emissions, refused to adhere to the Kyoto Protocol. And so in Bali and Poznan, Copenhagen, Cancun, COP after COP, these countries simply wouldn't play ball. Because the thing is, although the Conference of the Parties adopts resolutions, very often there are loopholes big enough for diesel trucks to drive through, or there are no dissuasive measures for countries, forcing countries really to adhere to decisions that are made. And we continued. After Cancun, we have Durban and Warsaw, which saw walkouts by many countries. And finally, in Lima, the United States and China agree to join the rest of the world in cutting emissions. And this important decision leads us to the Paris Agreement, where for the first time, the world decides to cap global warming, or shall I say, global heating, at around 2 degrees. However, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change shows that capping warming at around 2 degrees will continue to cause major adverse effects on the planet, like floods, famine, droughts, heat waves, increased diseases and crop failures, and so on. And so in Glasgow, the decision is made to make extra efforts and significant cuts to cap warming at around 1.5 degrees. Now, we may believe that this is good news to be celebrated, but unfortunately, the fossil capital hegemony really is difficult to kill, because fossil capital really has over the years expanded its frontier of accumulation by making the arguments that investments in coal and oil and so on are good for education and development and roads, etc. The Conference of the Parties has degenerated into, shall we say, a circus, because every year we have celebrities flying in their private jets for some performative environmentalism. World leaders come in, make grand speeches, and thereafter there is a lot of talking and very little transformative decision making happening. And so something needs to happen. Emissions keep rising. The number of coal power plants keep going up. And we cannot continue with these suicidal ways. And in my view, here's what needs to happen. The first thing is that we need to relitigate the Conference of the Parties and see whether it has outlived its usefulness, or do we need to reform it and replace it with better processes, more streamlined. The second thing we need to do is that we need a new internationalism. Civil society organizations, NGOs, and activists across all continents pushing our political parties to set important agendas to curb emissions and develop better. Only in this collaborative manner can we uniformly cut emissions across the world. Thirdly, we need to start building better communities. What does this mean? Shorter value chains. We need to start developing better mass transit systems, better insulated houses, more integrated communities, living where we work, that kind of thing. And obviously, we need to cut back harmful ways of production and consumption. Maybe some will call it degrowth, but I leave you to call it what you will. These things, in my view, must change very quickly.